Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. Today for our midweek meta deck feature we are playing JPA93's Legacy Showcase winning Sneak and Show deck. So I've played a Sneak and Show deck before on the channel. Basically we are trying to cheat one of these big creatures into play. So we can do that either with Show and Tell or Sneak Attack. We also have one Omniscience, so if we can Show and Tell this in, we can then hardcast we cast the Emrakul, and it's not very hard because it doesn't cost us anything. And then we get to take the extra turn from the cast trigger on this. So this deck is one that a lot of people had sort of written off as no longer viable, really. It sort of hadn't been doing well with initiative in the format, etc. But the new set has breathed a little bit of life into it in the form of Atraxa. So this card does it all, really. So this can find you your enchantment, your artifact, your creature, an instant and a sorcery, and a land. So this is going to find you loads of stuff if you put it into play, and it's going to be very hard to miss once this gets up and running. And it can find you like your next go around quite easily without having to pay a load of life like Griselbrand does. Obviously we still have Griselbrand, it's just effectively we have 5 copies of Griselbrand, 2 of them which pitch to Misdirection and Force of Will. So not a bad spot to be. The deck is very streamlined. We've got a bunch of cantrips to find the things we need. We've got a bunch of fast mana, as well as fast mana in our lands in the form of Ancient Tombs and City of Traitors. We've got our 8 payoff cards here. The things that go with them to make us actually win the game, and just a bunch of disruption here as well. So it's a pretty lean deck that's trying to accomplish one thing, and that one thing is very powerful. So we're going to see how we do. Sideboard-wise, we've got some pretty powerful tools. So we've got 4 defense grids. So if we're up against counterspell decks, just stick down the defense grid and off we go. We've got a couple of Blood Moons, which is going to be very useful in some of the matchups, like lands and things like that. Our Graveyard Hate is a little bit slim because we're hoping to sort of do similar things to our opponent who is reanimating big guys. So that's why we have the 3 surgical extractions rather than anything like Leylines or whatever. So we've got a little bit of disruption to knock them off balance until we do our thing. We also have an Omniscience, so when we do Show and Tell lines in Reanimator matchups, we can put this in, and then we can just cast our Emrakul. And it doesn't matter what our opponent puts in for the most part then. We've got Flusterstorm, it protects us, and it also can disrupt the opponent if they're a Storm combo deck, for example. Pyroblast and Red Blast, pretty standard sideboard cards are in deck with red mana. These are going to come in useful with protecting our things. And a couple of Brotherhood's End as a flexible way of cleaning a bunch of creatures up, whether they be elves or goblins or whatever, or blowing up a load of artifacts like the Painter deck, for example, or regular 8 cast. There's a lot of things it's going to be useful for. So it seems pretty clean. So this is the deck that won, like I said, won the Legacy Showcase. And I'm quite excited to see how it goes. Now, because the Legacy Showcase was the other day, was last night for me, I think it was, it means that the amount of people who might be playing a similar deck to this in the queues is probably going to be higher than it was. So we might end up getting some weird show and tells where our opponent puts in something scary. So we're going to have to be a little bit careful, more so today than we would have been a couple of days ago. Also, I did play in the showcase myself. I've got a video about that coming out tomorrow. Obviously, I did not do as well as this winning list by any stretch of the imagination, but hopefully you can find some stuff to enjoy in that one. Okay. So before we jump into the league, we're just going to do the usual plug. Like, comment, subscribe. These things cost you nothing and really help me out, so please do them. Okay, let's jump into a Legacy League with JPA93's Legacy Showcase winning deck list. Okay, we're on the play. We have turn 2, well, we have turn 1 Show and Tell, but we're not going to be able to cast it because I haven't got anything to put in, so we're going to go for a turn 2 Show and Tell potentially, but we don't have a blue source for our Ponder unless we use the Lotus Petal, which is awkward. We have to decide if we think we can find a land off of the Ponder, because we're looking for a land and a monster. I think we do keep this though. Now some might say this is a greedy keep. Okay, our opponents seem to be pretty much F6 there, so let's have a look. So we have a land, and we have a Daze. So we'll put this on top of our library, and the Daze on top of our library, and then the Scalding Tarn. We will not shuffle. Then we'll play out our things. We've got a blue source. We just need to look for a monster now. So we're going to shuffle this before we draw another card. We've got a Force of Will if we need to fire one off. A Lotus Petal from our opponents. What sort of combo are they going to be on? Mishra's Ball. But this suggests to me that our opponent is on 8 cast or potentially paint cast. We'll see, hopefully, in a second. Okay, this could be... This looks like we're actually seeing the mono black ad nauseum deck, perhaps. A defense grid. So if we don't counter this, our opponent... So if we counter this, our opponent gets to go on. If we don't... Yikes. We're in a little bit of trouble here. I think we have to Force of Will this to at least show a bit of strength here. Let's crack this. I don't think we're going to have to worry about interfering with our lands in our opponent's deck, so we're just going to get a Volk here. So we're looking to draw a big monster. We have a show and tell in hand. They were probably expecting we did have a show and tell since we pitched the other one to the Force. Okay, so we didn't hit the thing we wanted to hit. So I guess we're playing out our mountain and passing. Shatter Skull Smashing. Lion's Eye Diamond. Okay. Rite of Flame. This is looking more like a Belchery style deck to me. A gamble. It could just be regular epic gamble, which I haven't seen for a long time. Mainly because Tony himself has been playing a lot of different decks. He was the creator and the main proponent of that. So we get to draw a bunch of cards here. Okay. Vindictive Flamestoker. That's a pretty cool one. Okay, so this is looking like the Belcher deck that I played on my channel like a week or so ago. Another one of Tony Scapone's decks. So this card is pretty good gas. I should be able to quite easily get it up to casting all sorts of things here. Like this is going to get them 4 cards relatively easily. Grape Shot. So we're getting pinged for a little bit with this Grape Shot. This makes our Griselbrand worse, which is not nothing. It's going to put us to 10. And then our opponent's going to pass. So our opponent's got 2 cards in hand. Okay, so we've got a show and tell. So we've already got a Force of Will locked up here. So we can play out the Lotus Petal or the Volcanic Island. I think we just play out the Volcanic Island. Okay, we'll do our show and tell now. We'll put in... I think we're just going to put in a Griselbrand here, because this can draw more counter magic if required. I don't think we need to spin it up right now. I think we can wait and see what our opponent does. But we have a Force of Will locked up, and we can spin for more cards if required. I don't want to give our opponent too easy a line, since we've already seen a Grape Shot. I might be running multiple Grape Shots. A gamble. I think we let this one resolve. We can counter the Echo if we want to. Okay. So shoot it for a Lion's Eye Diamond, I imagine. Because if they had the Lion's Eye Diamond, they would have played out first. Okay. So now they're probably just playing... They're cracking their Soul Stoker right now, I think. Yeah. So they're just drawing up some cards. They were doing that gamble because it puts a counter on the guy, so it's basically free in terms of the cost it's going to cost to draw. And they might have got lucky and not discarded the Lion's Eye Diamond, so they get a free Lion's Eye Diamond. A defense grid. I think we want to hit this. If they fire something else off that forces us to... Okay, this is a gamble with some mana floating. So we have a choice here of letting them Echo of Aeons, or we can try and hit... We got 7. We can either have 7 cards here to try and find a counterspell. Now that can be Daze as well, so I think it's worth doing, because we've got Daze or Force of Wills to hit here. We hit none of them, so I think we are casting this Brainstorm. We have Brick to Gain here. Not great for us. I guess we'll put these 2 on top. We're losing them anyway. I suppose we can pitch the Spirit Guide. They've got quite a large amount of Storm right now. Okay, so now we have a Daze. We don't have an obvious route into... Oh, they've conceded. Interesting. We didn't have an obvious route into making the next creature. But we have a Griselbrand, which usually does quite a lot of work. Alright. So, what's going to be good in this matchup? If they play a bunch of stuff and pass, we're going to want some of these. This whole thing is laid out in quite an awkward way. Let's move these across. So, we've got these Brotherhood ends, which is good if they're going to pass the turn. Flusterstorm seems like a pretty obvious one here. Surgical Extraction does give us some interaction that we wouldn't otherwise have. the Pyroblast and Red Blast do hit the Echo, which is one of their main engines. So I like all of these things. Misdirection doesn't seem like where we want to be. And we've got a lot of things to cut. I don't think we need to Omniscience. I think one of our guys should be enough. That still leaves us with... So that gets us... So far, gets us those two. So if we want to get the Flusterstorm and these Surgicals, we're going to need to find more space. And these Brotherhoods End, we are going to need to find some more space. Now, it's quite hard to sideboard with this deck because you don't need... Because you need kind of like your critical mass of things. So I guess we're trimming on some of our cantrips here. That gets us these three. So the Brotherhood's End also defeats the Empty the Warren's lines. Now it's a case of can we fit in these surgical extractions? Do I think these Dazes are going to be good on the play? I think they're probably going to be okay. But maybe we're just looking at going fast and stripping these into our deck. I don't like that. I think I'd rather just have more blue cards for ponders and things. The Misdirection isn't really going to do us any good here. I think we'll submit like this. So what does this hand do? If our opponent plays some stuff out, and then we Brotherhood's End, that's okay, but we can only do it on turn 3. We do get to ponder. Do we think this hand is going to be good enough, though? Doesn't really interact with our opponent on turn 1, so I think we need to go back. Okay, this one does interact, but doesn't have any additional mana. It's pretty ugly, but we've got 3 bits of mana. So I guess we keep this because we don't need a lot of mana to make this work. I suppose we probably have to get rid of the sneak attack here. Although if we draw... I don't really want to get rid of our mana in this particular situation. So I think we are the control in this matchup plan. Let's see how this one transpires. Shadow Skull Smashing, paying 3 life. They've got a Lotus Petal and a Bauble and a Mox Opal. So we can play Defense Grid here. We have to counterspell the Defense Grid because we won't get another chance. I think we get rid of the other force and we hold up the Flusterstorm. Sure, they got 1 card in hand. I would very much like to draw a land here, obviously. Okay, so we did draw a land. So we will play out our Lotus Petals because our opponent might end up in a situation where they can cast an Echo of Aeons, so at least we have them on board. So we're looking to draw basically our combo here. We haven't got either half of it, but we do have another Flusterstorm for protection. And we have a Simian Spirit Guide, so we can cast a sneak attack potentially. Although we don't really want to go down with our Flusterstorm. We have to keep this up. Ancient Tomb. It's pretty good against the old Flusterstorms. Okay, and nothing from our opponent. They're just on redraws now. They've seen our Flusterstorm. Okay, we've got a Daze as well. We could play this Simian Spirit Guide out, but I don't think that's worth burning both of our Lotus Petals for. Okay, so we've got a Bauble. We can also use the Daze to increase our Storm count for Flusterstorm. A Ponder, okay. One of the best draws we could have had. Let's try and fix our hand a little bit. So this gives us one of the things we need to try and win the game. And it does give us some land. So I think we have to put the Tomb, then the Emrakul, then the Tarn. So the plan is to draw the Emrakul and then shuffle afterwards. But if for some reason we find ourselves really wanting to not draw this Emrakul, we can shuffle. But we're always going to want to draw the Scalding Tarn there. This gives us sneak attack plus activation mana, which is what we're hoping to draw. So I think they know these 2 cards, but not the Daze. Chromox, Storm is 1. What are they imprinting? Nothing. Okay, this could be like a Galvanic Relay. Harnfell. So we can't Flusterstorm this because it's not an instant or sorcery, and we can't Daze it because our opponent can pay. So yeah, pretty awkward for us. I think our opponent should be able to win from here. Galvanic Relay and a Gamble. So they don't have the mana for this Galvanic Relay this turn. So they're casting a Rite of Flame here. So if we counterspell this, they can't. If we counterspell this, they can't. I guess we could Daze this first. Stop our opponent So we might be able to burn off one of our opponent's Lotus Petals here. Okay, they're just letting it go through. So they could gamble here and put a... Oh, these are for next turn, aren't they? Oh, wait, no, they're Harmfell, aren't they? They're not for next turn. So opponent's Hellbent. So we'll draw this Emrakul. Then we'll play this out. And then we will crack our Scalding Tarn. We still have a Flusterstorm. Not that it's going to do very much when our opponent's got all this mana. But we'll see. A hard cast Echo of Aeons. This is Storm 1. They know we can counterspell this. I guess we do counterspell it because they can cast it next turn. But at least this way we get a chance to draw a sneak attack and destroy our opponent's permanents next turn. We'll crack this now before I forget. Get Volcanic Island. Scalding Tarn. Not really the one we wanted here. If our opponent's going to wheel this turn, which I suspect they are, we want to play out our Scalding Tarn. We probably want to crack it. Actually, no, we probably want to save up our mana for the counter spells and brainstorms we might draw. But if they draw 7, they get to put a load of cards into Harmfell, so it's effectively more like drawing 14. Okay, Vindictive Flamestoker. So they can play that, and then they can use their Mox Opal to cast this Echo of Aeons. They could gamble first if they wanted to, but they can just save the gamble for whenever. So what do we have here? We have no way of interacting with our opponent. So I suspect they kill us this turn, because that's what Harmfell does. So they got a Lion's Eye Diamond, pretty useful one. And they got a Grape Shot. We're a long ways off of being killed by a Grape Shot, but they have so many resources to work with now. It should be relatively easy for them to combo us. Okay, Rite of Flame as well. So they can play out their artifact mana. They can Rite of Flame. And then they can do Lion's Eye Diamond shenanigans. And they still got a bunch of cards in hand they can pitch. So it should be relatively easy for our opponent to get this one. Okay, they're going to 2. So there's the Burgie. So they play the Lion's Eye Diamond here, which gives them the red, which they can then turn into the Rite of Flame. Meanwhile, they're all building up all these counters on the Vindictive Flamestoker that draws 4, but because of Harmfell, it's kind of like drawing 8 if it needs to be. So pretty strong from our opponent. We've got a lot of stuff to put on the stack here. There's a non-0% chance that they fizzle here, but it's incredibly low. But we might as well let them play it out. Okay, so they're grape shotting us here. And then, oh, they got another grape shot, haven't they? Yeah. So we are dead here. They've got 2 grape shots. That'll do. So, Daze is going to be better on the play. I think the Brotherhood's End would have been good in some of those situations where you can blow up our opponent's mana after we stop that first thing. Do we want these surgical extractions? I think we need enough fast mana to go fast. I think that's important. I think we just have to submit like this. Like the surgical extraction could have caught an Echo in that particular game, but I think that's very unlikely in terms of how the game usually plays out. So this requires a little bit more mana to do stuff with, and it only has a Daze to interact with our opponent, which isn't a lot of interaction. But we do have sneak attack as a thing we can do. We have cantrips we can draw. So if we draw like, I don't know if I can keep with just 1 Daze. 1 Daze just really doesn't feel like a lot. So we have 3 mana here. So a Soul Land gives us a turn 3 sneak attack activated. I'm not happy about this keep, and I'm sure people who play this deck more than me are unhappy with this keep on my end as well. Now our opponent kept a 7 as well. It's a little bit concerning. A defense grid. I guess we we try and counter the defense grid. Sure. So we burned off a Lotus Petal. Not ideal. We set ourselves back a turn as well. Show and tell. Okay, setting ourselves back a turn there might come back to bite us. We have a question of what we put in. We probably just put in the Emrakul and try to fade a turn because we can't blow up this defense grid right now. So our opponent makes a Burgie. Okay, so we get a turn here. What do we find? An Ancient Tomb. So we can show and tell, put in the sneak attack Emrakul. That feels like a strong play. So I'm going to do that. So this is 1, 2, 3. We'll put in the sneak attack. It puts our opponent to 1 and removes all of their permanents from play. So yeah, we managed to get that one piece of Daze just to take out that Petal might have made a difference. I think our opponent is probably, with this hand, is still just going on turn. I guess maybe they could have done this and then played the Petal to give themselves 1 red mana, which might have given them a start. But I think we got a little bit fortunate there. But we are 1-0, so let's go into round 2. We're on the play again, which is a nice place to be. Our hand requires mana sources. But we have Island Ponder. We don't have any sort of counter spells here. But we might be able to just find a soul land and just make a turn 2 show and tell. I think the fact that we have 2 bits of filtering is worth keeping here on the play. We do have to get a basic island with this Scalding Tarn though. Basic island. And Ponder. So a land, we want this. We also want this Lotus Petal. So I guess we put the Brainstorm on top. Then the Petal. Then the Flooded Strand. Say no to shuffling, draw the Flooded Strand, and then we have Flooded Strand into show and tell next turn. And we can put in an Emrakul. But we'll see what our opponent does, because it might be a situation where doing that could end up with us losing the game. We can also just play it to force counter spells out of our opponent's hand. Preordain. Okay, we might be on a mirror here, which means if we cast show and tell, we might just die. So we might have to wait another turn on our show and tell so we can put sneak attack in and sneak attack in our Emrakul. I don't want to just show and tell and pass a turn, because if they have an Emrakul, that we lose the game. So we'll play this one out. We will crack this. I think now we have to get a Volcanic. So I think we are on Preordain with this mana. A Daze and a Volcanic. So we kind of want both of these. So we'll put the Volcanic on top. And then the Daze. So we've got the Daze as protection. We can play this Lotus Petal out now. So we have a show and tell with enough mana to use an Emrakul if our opponent looks like they're going to be. So this definitely feels like our opponent is on the same deck as us. Ponder. So which means they're quite likely to let the sneak attack resolve, because it means they get to put the show and tell to resolve, because it means they get to do something a bit gross. Because they might just think, oh well, our Emrakul will win the game for us. But that might not be the case. Okay, so let's cast this show and tell. Blue, blue, blue. We can Daze this, but it seems unlikely that we're going to get a Daze to resolve. A Flusterstorm. Sure. Main deck Flusterstorm. That's an interesting one. We'll not pay this one. We could pay and resolve this show and tell. We wouldn't be able to put in an Emrakul, a sneak attack, and go ahead. I think it's better just to wait and just use our sneak attack, because we've got 2 more bites of the cherry here in terms of making big scary things. We do need another mana source to make a sneak attack and use it in the same turn. So our opponent is going to sneak attack here. This is one that we have to counterspell here. So they can pay here. Okay, they've got a force spell. So we're about to get Emrakul. It could be an Atraxa, which might not be. Okay, that's game over. We'll concede. Yeah, so it is a mirror match. Excellent. Fun time. So I imagine the Omniscience is for this matchup. And the Flusterstorm. So we only want to be casting show and tells if we have an Omniscience. I don't think that many of other things. We could play some sort of weird surgical extraction game, but I don't think that's worth trying to accomplish. We don't really have a way of messing with our opponent's thing. I did mention at the start that we might end up running into the mirror match a little bit. Misdirection is going to be useful to force counterspells through. To force things through. So we can probably show some of these things. Maybe we're not supposed to have all these show and tells, because the only thing we're really going to be show and telling in is sneak attack. Although if we have the Omniscience, we're more likely. So I think we'll probably keep 1 ponder and trim a show and tell here. I'm far from being an expert in show and tell decks. I'd say I'm not even a novice. So this is probably wrong, but it all makes sense. Like, we have good disruption for the things they're doing. We've got show and tells in, but less of them. And we only want them if we can Omniscience for the Emrakul. Okay, this hand seems alright. It lets us do our thing pretty pronto. Like, this is the thing we're trying to get to in the matchup. So we already have it in hand. So I think we can play this out. I'm going to play our Lotus Petal to represent... I'll play our Lotus Petal to represent hardcast Daze or multiple points of interaction like Flusterstorm, etc. An island from our opponent into nothing. A Scalding Tarn. So this is 1, 2, 3 mana. So we can make 4 mana this turn, or we can try and sneak attack next turn. Now, there's a question about whether we play around a Daze or whatever. We kind of need to draw something that isn't a land. We did keep a land-heavy hand because it had the thing that we need to do in this particular matchup. But whether or not we're going to be able to push that through, I do not know. Let's have a look. A Daze. Right, we can jam here with Daze backup, but our opponent has mana here. I think we have to pass the turn here and just play it a little bit cagey. A Brainstorm. So we are representing hardcast Force of Will right now as well, which I think our opponent has to respect a little bit. Okay, they got green in their deck, so they are a bit different to us. I'm curious what the green is for. Maybe they've got Eureka as well in their deck, but Eureka is not really a card you want to cast in this matchup. A Ponder, sure. And then nothing else. So they've still got 2 mana up. So this is Pyroblast and Flusterstorm potentially. A Ponder. I think we are pondering here rather than trying to just jam. I think this is any order in a shuffle. We do not need mana sources right now. Okay, so you have another Ponder. Like, a bunch of guys to put in isn't really what we need. We have Griselbrand. We have these cards anyway, so I think we have to go any order and shuffle. We're just trying to find extra things to help us play through what our opponent's got. So we might be doing an end of turn Brainstorm, or brainstorming in response to something our opponent does. I think it's getting to the point where we might just have to jam soon, which is not great. So I'm going to try and Brainstorm for another look at a piece of protection. Obviously our Daze doesn't do anything here, which is far from an optimal Brainstorm either, because we are doing it end of turn. But we want to have the maximum amount of mana available in case we find the right bits and pieces. Okay, so we have a Show and Tell. That's quite a good one to try and sneak through. This Daze isn't really doing anything right now, so we can put that one away. And I guess we leave the Griselbrand on top, because something has to go on top. And this is lethal if we have both of them. So we're going to cast a Show and Tell, expecting it to get countered. So this is going to be our way of trying to hammer through our opponent's stuff. I do not expect this Show and Tell to resolve. If they hardcast a Force of Will, then we can crack this Brainstorm and get the Daze off the top of our library. They shouldn't let this resolve. Like, even in Omniscience doesn't do a lot here, unless they have some sort of Cunning Wish line, because we get to just jam with our Emrakul, and we can also put the Griselbrand in. So we have lethal if this resolves, and we get to remove all our opponent's permanents. Surgical Extraction on the Ponder. Okay, they get to see our hand and see how bad it is before they know if they need to counter it. I suspect that means the Show and Tell isn't resolving. Maybe they were just trying to see if we were trying to bait them or not. Or they're seeing if they can beat it. I suspect this gets a counterspell now. Unless they were just trying to get some information before they scoop it up. A Flusterstorm. So we can pay 3 here. I think we're going to pay here because we still have the Petal. I suspect they're going to have another counterspell here. We no longer have the Daze on top because we shuffled. But I don't think the Daze on top is necessarily where we want to be when they've still got all this mana up. They know that if this resolves, they're getting attacked by an Emrakul. So if they have a counterspell, they probably fire off. Our opponent went to add a green mana briefly, and then undid that, which makes me think they might have some sort of Veil of Summer type effect. Yeah, so there's the Veil of Summer. So this is going to be used to try and draw into a counterspell. Force of Will, Pitching Intuition. Okay, so we get to do a similar play next turn as long as we don't die here. They've conceded from the game because they know we have the sneak attack that can come down next turn. Alright, I am relatively happy with how we sideboarded there. I think we're just going to fire it up again. They do have Veil of Summer, which is a bit of a problem for us. Okay, let's just submit a deck and see how we go. So we have Sneak Attack, which we want. We have a Brainstorm to try and fix our hand. I think we keep this one. I'm not confident that we can win this game particularly easily on the draw, but we've got to give it a shot. So we're going to lead out on Volcanic Island and try and do some sort of Brainstorm, Scalding Tarn shenanigans on our second turn, but we also have the Brainstorm up if we need it on their turn. Okay, so we can make a Sneak Attack and activate it next turn. So if our opponent taps out, we might be on the line for doing that. But we don't really have any protection, so I think we're just going to draw a card here and try and get maximum Brainstorm value in our opponent's turn. Not feeling confident. Okay, a Brainstorm. That's unlikely. It means them comboing off this turn is less likely, because I think casting a Show and Tell from our opponent is a very risky proposition unless they have the immediate mana to activate a Sneak Attack, which is pretty much what this comes down to. So we're going to cast a Brainstorm on our opponent's end step and then shuffle away with our Scalding Tarn and hopefully improve our hand a bunch. Wow, they're just going for a Show and Tell here. That was a bold choice. That was a very bold choice. I think we're going to cast a Brainstorm in response. So we don't really have anything we can do here. So I guess we're putting these on top. And then this resolves. I think we have to put in the Sneak Attack here. If we have an Omniscience, how do we beat Omniscience? We can try and Griselbrand for a bunch of cards to draw. I think that's probably slightly better. Okay. So we have to draw some cards here. Uncounterable Griselbrand is a tricky beast to beat. Yeah, it's a tricky beast. Can't be countered. That's an issue. Can't. We can Pyroblast the Omniscience here. If we've got any red sources left in our deck. Force of Will. Sure, let's just make a really big pile on the stack here. Let's get rid of this Atraxa. Intuition. I want our opponent to have that. Let's do this. I'm not really sure what our end game here is. So we Pyroblast their Omniscience. Now, how do we stop an Emrakul? There's no way we can get more permanents into play to dodge this. They're just going to get the extra turn. We're just done here. But we had a little counterspell fight, and we won the counterspell fight. But, yeah, tough. Yeah, so we brought in our Omniscience for exactly this reason, because if you have the Omniscience Emrakul, it's just lights out. A bit like if you Show and Tell in Sneak Attack and activate it, it's lights out. So it's kind of one of those, I think being on the play pretty much means you win, because they've got one card left in hand. We did see a little bit of counter magic from them though, so we're not necessarily likely to get things going ourselves there. Oh well, we are 1-1. We lost to the Mirror Splash Green. I think it might just be splashing green for the Veil of Summer actually. So we go on to the third random. We're on the play again, which is nice, but this is a problematic hand. We would need to draw a mana source. I think we can't realistically keep this, to be honest. This one is better. We have Island Ponder. We have one of the things we would like to put into play. We have mana up here. I think we're going to get rid of the Tarn. We're going for a Island Ponder on the first turn. I don't mind the Preordain here. Like, this means if we get a Show and Tell, we get to do the big thing. So maybe we put the Ancient Tomb on top, then the Omniscience, then the Preordain. And then we can Preordain next turn. And if we use a Daze, we can camouflage the fact we don't really have another hard and fast land. We have a Brainstorm that we can use after our Preordain as well to try and find a fetch. Okay, our opponent's got Preordain as well, but they are on Underground Seas, which makes me think Doomsday. That's my guess here. So there's Omniscience. Let's cast this Preordain. This one can go on the bottom of the library. This one can go on the top of the library. Then we can play this Scalding Tarn out. Next turn we can Brainstorm fetch land. A Ponder. Okay, that's not a Doomsday, so that's not the scariest thing in the world. We've got our Daze as a little bit of interaction. They did not shuffle their library. That's a little bit concerning. Let me Brainstorm now. Wowzers. So we don't need two Emrakuls, so one of these can go away. And I don't think we need the City of Traitors if you've got these Lotus Petals, to be honest. I think that one can go away. Or we get rid of one petal, actually. Get rid of one petal. Then we can play out good old-fashioned Volcanic Island, and we can crack our Tarn. Maybe we're supposed to crack it just in case our opposition agents. A Dark Ritual. Get ourselves a Volcanic Island. So are we supposed to daze this, or are we supposed to daze the Doomsday? I think it doesn't really matter too much. Now this is where they're not Doomsday, and they get us. This could just be a bait Dark Ritual, which is something you quite often do. Okay, we're going to get our Daze Thoughtseize here. If we can draw a Show and Tell next turn and resolve it, then we can win the game. If they do a Doomsday pass the turn pile, which considering they have 2 mana in their pool and 1 Lotus Petal, seems likely that they'll do a pass the turn pile. This deck could also be Ad Nauseam Tendrils that we're playing against. But I've got a feeling it's Doomsday, which is a better deck than Ad Nauseam Tendrils, I believe. They took the Omniscience, so this is the pass the turn line, or... Okay. This is our opponent telling us they're not going to win the game this turn. Rain of Filth. Okay, so it is... Okay, so it is Ad Nauseam Tendrils here. Why would they take the Omniscience? They just not care about the Daze. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Mana is really not an issue for these guys. Like, I don't really want to use the Daze as a +1 storm count for them. 6 mana in their pool. A Brainstorm. So if they find exactly Ad Nauseam, they're packed of negationing their own Brainstorm. Tendrils of Agony. Okay, so this is just for this. We counted this one. Okay, so this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So that is exactly lethal damage. Okay, so they are Ad Nauseam Tendrils. Understood. They took the Flusterstorm because they could, I guess. So it's not the Flusterstorm, the Omniscience, because what we were doing didn't matter. You can board in Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast just to hit some of the things they do. This deck tends to be less likely to commit things to the board, so Brotherhood's End isn't quite as good as it would be against something like the Epic Storm. Misdirection can redirect to Thoughtseize on a crucial turn. We're probably boarding out our cantrips here. I don't think Blood Moon's worth it or anything like that, because their opponent can just sort of ignore bits and pieces that are going on. Do we need Omniscience so that we can get our free turn off the Emrakul? That is a real question, isn't it? I think we might do it just because the amount of turns that we're going to get in this game is going to be drastically reduced. So we've seen a Pact of Negation. That's an unusual one. Still not sure we want these Dazes, these Pyroblast and Red Blast. I think we're all right like this. Okay. Island Ponder. We've got a Surgical Extraction. We've got a Daze to mess with our opponent a little bit. What have we got? Okay, so I think we'll take Sneak Attack and a Petal. So we'll draw this one. We'll play this out now. And then next turn we will draw a Sneak Attack and then we will crack our fetch land. Duress. Interesting. I guess we lose information to our opponent there. I don't want to set ourselves back a land when we're trying to Sneak Attack win. I don't think that's a realistic option. Play this fetch land and pass. I suspect we are going to lose this game. Maybe we should have mulliganed for a more aggressive way. No, we'll let this one go. Make our opponent think that we had something by pausing slightly. Sounds Volk. A Griselbrand. Okay, so we need to survive another turn. A Night's Whisper. Okay. So we might get to do the thing. Atraxa also pretty good. But I think because we're trying to do counterspells and stuff, we're going to want to put our Griselbrand in here. Let's draw 7 cards. If we draw any fast mana, we can put another guy in. In comes the Emrakul. Alright, so we got a game. So now we've got to do that again. Am I supposed to board in these blasts to slow our opponent down a little bit? I honestly don't think the surgicals are very good. I think I'd rather just hit some cantrips maybe. And let's bring back another ponder in. I don't like the Dazes, but we have to keep them in. So this hand kind of does our thing, but doesn't interact with our opponent, so I think we have to mulligan. This hand doesn't do anything because we've got no mana sources, so I think we have to mulligan this one. Okay, we can keep this one. 2 of these cards got to go on the bottom. So it's going to be a Volcanic Island and one of the big guys. I think I'm going to get rid of the one that doesn't pitch to Force of Will. So we'll keep the Atraxa. Okay, just basic island, go for our opponent. Our Volcanic Island, and we'll play out our Lotus Petal as well. So we're looking for Show and Tell and Sneak Attack. Sneak Attack is a little bit slower and will require us to have like a soul land to power out in a reasonable time. I'm debating dazing this. I don't think I want to daze. If I could hardcast a daze, I think I would hardcast it on this Brainstorm. But because we can't hardcast it without losing our petal, I don't think it's quite what I want to do. There's a petal. It's over to us. Scalding Tarn. Okay, so we'll play this one up. So if we get any sort of reasonable target for a daze, I think we have to take it at this point in the game. Black-blue, Night's Whisper. I think we will... Our opponent is a critical resources deck, so we need to slow them down. So this is basically just blowing up a Lotus Petal. Now it's possible our opponent can just chain some Dark Rituals together and get us now, but they would have been able to do that around a daze anyway. So we can hit Show and Tell. Oh, where are they going? Okay, so we're losing the only card in our hand. All right. Not a great space to be in. We found another threat. So Sneak Attack off the top, if we don't die this turn, is good. They know we can't have Force of Will, so they just have to play around some pretty simple stuff. Cabal Ritual. Peer into the Abyss. This should be lethal. I'm just not gonna make them play it out. So basically, they've drawn half their deck, so they're just gonna play a bunch of free mana out and then get us. So our hand fell apart a little bit there. We had to mulligan quite heavily in that game. We mulliganed to 5, and we're a little bit of ways off of doing anything we needed. We needed another couple of turns, but realistically, we're not going to get 2 more turns against a deck like this. Perhaps we could have mulliganed more, but I don't think that's a realistic plan to do. I think losing game 1 is a little bit awkward because we didn't really have a super fast hand in game 1. So, oh well, let's go on to the 4th round. We're on the draw. We have our Show and Tell, but we need something to put in with it. We have a Force of Will, but we lose our Show and Tell if we do it. So I think we have to throw this one back. This one has a Daze and only needs one of its pieces, I guess. I guess we keep the Emrakul in case we're on some sort of mirror. I guess we throw back the Griselbrand because it doesn't pitch to Force of Will. So we have a lot of good draws available to us, and we actually have a little bit of interaction we can use here. Our opponent has got a 70 card deck, which is an odd number. A 77 card deck. Okay, so we have it on turn 2. Our opponent didn't play anything on their turn. A little bit concerning. Not entirely sure what's happening on our opponent's side of the battlefield right now. Quandrix Campus. Okay, I'm more confused. We've got Show and Tell with Daze Protection here. Our opponent can't do any sort of Daze shenanigans because they didn't have an island in play. So we can beat a Force of Will here. Let's try this Show and Tell out. I'm not sure which of these 2 things I'm supposed to put into play. Because I don't know what my opponent's doing, I'm kind of tempted to just draw some more cards here. I think that's what we're going to go for. Like, they only have 1 permanent, so there's not a lot of permanents to take out with Emrakul. Let's see what we get off our Atraxa. So this is a blue-green land with scry 1 for 4 mana. Okay, so we get a land. Probably going to be a volcanic here. We get a sorcery in Ponder, an instant in Force of Will, and a creature in another Atraxa, which we can pitch to the Force of Will. So we don't have to use our Ponder. Land, creature, instant sorcery. Maybe we're supposed to take the island there instead of the Volk. But our opponent's playing Quandrix Campus. I have to imagine that they've got... they're not trying to mess with our lands in like a big way, like Blood Moon, back to basics type stuff. So we've got 8 cards in hand, so one of these cards has got to go. I think it's probably going to be our Mountain. So next turn we can do Ponder, Preordain type stuff. Alright, we've got another reader. What is this? Litjara Mirror Lake. Taps for blue. Pay 5 mana. Create a creature token. It's a copy of attack. Creature you control, except it gets additional +1/+1 activated as a sorcery. Whenever you draw a card, you may have target player mill a card. Okay? So we're on some sort of blue-green milling deck with interesting section of lands going on here. Sneak attack. So we have a plan for next turn. Let's ponder our way into some more business. I think we just any order and shuffle these. Okay. Then we will Preordain, I think. A Lotus Petal and a Scalding Tarn. We do need more mana to activate our sneak attack. So I guess we put the Scalding Tarn on top and then the Lotus Petal. And we can play the Lotus Petal. And if we need to, we can do an emergency Brainstorm. But at the moment we're looking at Force of Will, pitching Atraxa, and then also Daze to back that up with. And then we can sneak attack Emrakul, our opponent, to death. So we're going to get milled for 1 here. Also, the milling deck against the Emrakul deck, not really where the milling deck wants to be, truth be told. Scalding Tarn. Another island. Sure. This is a 2 mana 2/2. Haven't seen any like cards that I would describe as legacy cards from our opponent yet. Oh, we milled the Scalding Tarn, didn't we? Okay. So I think we are on cast Show and Tell here. Put in Sneak Attack. Put in Emrakul. Weapon Rack. Move a camera. Okay. I have the Flying Spaghetti Monster. They're going to lose a bunch of permanents. They do have enough permanents so they're not going to lose everything. But again, we have Force of Will and Daze. And in a pinch, we can chuck our Atraxa into play to dig for some more cards. So basically have to sacrifice everything but the Pixie. Then the Pixie goes under the bus. So the Emrakul dies. Then the Emrakul shuffles in. That's our opponent's turn. We have no permanents in play, so Daze is going to be pretty good. Have a lethal threat. I don't think we need to do that right now. Okay. Okay, our opponent has conceded the entire match there. I'm not really sure what happened here. My opponent's deck didn't feel like a legacy deck. Maybe they queued into the wrong thing. They had a 77 card deck. Maybe they used Magic Online and were playing with some stuff they had. Didn't quite work out the queues. Hard to say. I feel a bit bad for our opponent to get queued into this. So hopefully they have a better time of it going forwards. Alright, so we're 2-2 going into the final match to see if we can get a 3-2. We're on the play for the final round. We have a Ponder, but if we don't find a blue card, our Force of Will isn't live. But we have a decent chunk of mana. I think we do keep this. And we go get an island on turn 1 off of our Misty Rainforest. Ideally, we want to see like Show and Tell and 2 other blue cards on top of our library with this Ponder. That would be nice. Maybe a Daze as well or something. There's an argument for not cracking the Ponder turn 1, but I think that's a bit foolish. There's not a million decks in the format that you want to be Force of Willing on turn 1. And setting up our thing for turn 2 feels like a good one. So we do want the Sneak Attack. So we'll put the Misdirection on top, then the Sneak Attack, and the Force. So we'll draw the Force of Will. Next turn we will take a land, shuffle away. We'll take the sneak attack. We'll shuffle over Scalding Tarn. Then we're pretty close to having our Emrakul flying at our opponent via a sneak attack, and we've got a second one to get the last few points of damage as well. We kind of look like a bunch of different decks right now, so we have that going for us too. If I remember rightly, there's an Ancient Tomb on top of our library. Lion's Eye Diamond, okay. Painter's Servant. I do not want my opponent to have a Painter's Servant, because they can get the Grindstone off of the Saga here. So we're going to crack this. We get Volk because our opponent isn't going to be doing anything with our lands because they're a painted deck. I think this painted deck I probably rate as about the 4th best deck in the format right now. I think the best 2 decks are obviously Delver and Initiative, and then I think it's probably Breakfast and then Blue Painter. That's my personal rankings, but obviously things can change quite quickly. So what we're looking for here, a Lotus Petal or a Simian Spirit Guide would be nice. A Brainstorm. So we have a choice here. We can either just drop the sneak attack and say, can you kill me? I don't hate that. Let's see if they have it. They don't have Metallic Rebuke up here. It's just a case of if they have the force or not. Okay, so we've got the sneak attack. So our opponent can't mill us out with a Painted Servant because we have an Emrakul in our deck. We have 3 Emrakul, 3 Griselbrand, 2 Atraxa, if I remember rightly. So this matchup should be pretty good for us. Khan the Great Creator. This can go and get a Pithing Needle or an Ensnaring Bridge. And that's going to be a little bit tough for us to beat. How do we realistically beat an Ensnaring Bridge? That's a good question. I don't have an answer to that one either. I guess it starts with the Ponder. Maybe we're supposed to Brainstorm first. Show and Tell, Preordain. I think it's any order. Alright, so let's cast a Brainstorm. Let's put that one back, and we'll put the Preordain back. We'll get that back next turn. Yeah, this Khan's going to be an issue. I think we made a mistake countering the Painted Servant, because we don't get milled out by Grindstone. I just instinctively countered the Painted Servant because I was like, oh yeah, I don't want them to combo us off. But we can't get milled out by just a Grindstone. We need a Grindstone and a piece of Graveyard Hate. So I think that was a mistake on our part there. And we're probably going to pay for it now because of the Khan. How do we beat this? Let's check our deck list. I don't know how we can beat this. I think we're in a situation of trying to see some of our opponent's cards. But we can probably just scoop this one up in a sec. A Haywire Might. We can't beat the Ensnaring Bridge anyway. Because all of our guys are bigger than their hand size anyway. Alright. Pretty gross that one. But we have some options here. So Brotherhood's End is a must include here. Blood Moon is pretty good against Sagas, which is one of our opponent's best cards, so I don't mind these. The Red Blast definitely have text in this matchup. The Flusterstorm, not so convinced on. The Extraction is okay. Our opponent is trying to assemble combos, but they are also a deck that uses their own graveyard via Emry. So these are options. These are ones I think we do want though. So, what are we looking to snap off here? I don't actually like Daze in this matchup very much. I don't think Misdirection is very good either. So that's already all of these slots so we can get 1 Surgical Extraction. Do we want to try and fit in more Surgical Extractions? I don't think so. Do we want more Omniscience, Emrakul type shenanigans? Omniscience feels like quite a powerful tool in this matchup. But if we're boarding out a cantrip for it, that's a little bit awkward too. I think that's probably fine. Is that good enough? Brotherhood's End is one of the best cards in the matchup. We will keep this. Our opponent cannot just Grindstone us out naturally unless they have a 3-piece combo and the lands for it. So I'm happy to just play this game with a Ponder on turn 1. And then a Brotherhood's End on turn 3 or more. Okay. Do I want Ponders and Force of Wills? Okay, we'll get a Ponder out now, I guess. And then we got Force for next turn if we need it. Saga and a Petal. And a Mox. And a Lion's Eye Diamond. This is usually a one-of in these decks. It's kind of interesting I had it both times. And another Mox. This is a Thoughtcast. Chalice of the Void for 1. That's fine. This Ponder is Force of Will bait anyway. So there's our little Force of Will. So you've got Force of Will up. We can play a sneak attack next turn. We can Brotherhood's End as well. Now we have to watch for Haywire Might, so we don't really want to just play out the sneak attack and let our opponent blow it up. Another Mox Opal, that's fine. Just making a construct. Sure. That's not too scary. Another Force of Will that we knew was coming. The question is here, do we Brotherhood's End here, or do we let our opponent make another Saga token? I think we let our opponent make another Saga token, take the hit, and then force through our Brotherhood's End that way. We should be able to take out our opponent's whole thing. Probably it's worth them cracking a Petal here, if this is how they intend to win with Beatdown. Milling, not a great strategy for them when we have Emrakul on my deck. So, okay. So there goes the Saga. Pithing Needle. This is going to name Sneak Attack. Yep. So we're going to take a hit for 6. Our opponent cannot cast Metallic Rebuke because they don't have any blue mana. So if we draw another blue card, that would be extra good for us. We did not draw another blue card this turn. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I think this turn we are just Brotherhood's ending here. So red, red, and 2. Force of Will. We will Force of Will back, pitching Force of Will, I think, because we're about to unlock our Ponder. Okay, so they can see because they're losing all of their permanents. And next turn we play this Ancient Tomb, tap this and this, put Griselbrand into play, bash them. Alright, so sideboard card's pretty good as it turns out, so I think we just do the same thing again. I wouldn't mind some more Brotherhood Ends if I'm being perfectly honest, but beggars can't be choosers. We definitely have the tools to win this matchup. We have some real big haymakers. This show and tell is not going to get us anywhere. We need to mulligan. We have the Brotherhood's End. We were going to keep this hand. I don't really think we're in the market for the Emrakul just yet, so I think we're going to get rid of that one. Maybe we could have got rid of the Ancient Tomb actually. Maybe that was foolish of me to get rid of the Emrakul. This is an artifact. This is an artifact. Yeah, we definitely shouldn't have got rid of the Emrakul. A second punt for me in this particular match. Not ideal. Let's punt. Let's ponder. Let's not punt. Let's not do that. Okay, so we have an Atraxa and a Griselbrand. I want some number of these. I think we'll put the Griselbrand on bottom, then the Ponder, and the Atraxa. And we'll not shuffle our library. I don't think we want to play out our Lotus Petal yet. We don't want our opponent to know how close they are to getting Brotherhood's ended. Okay, so there's the Saga. So our opponent is representing Brotherhood's End right now. So I think we cast this Ponder. So our opponent's kind of a fair beatdown deck right now. Don't really... I'm not a big fan of this Force of Will, but we maybe need it. We may need it to force our Brotherhood's End through. I think we'll put this on top, and then the Scalding Tarn. We'll play the Scalding Tarn. I think we will play out the Petal actually, and we'll pass. We can decide if we want this Force of Will or not. I think we will take the Force of Will. So we'll play out this Ancient Tomb. So we could just try and jam a show and tell here. No, I think we're going to pass. We can hard cast a Force of Will if we really want to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our plan is to force through a Brotherhood's End again. Oh, what am I doing? I didn't crack my Scalding Tarn. Oh no. They're going to Pithing Needle us. On Scalding Tarn. On Sneak Attack, sure. I appreciate our opponent not choosing us. I don't think that's actually would help them here, but... So on top of our library is a Griselbrand, I believe. Oh, last game of the night. I think it's a Griselbrand, and I want to draw the Griselbrand so I can use the Force of Will. It is the Griselbrand. Okay, good. So, what do we start off with here? I think we crack this first, go and get ourselves a Volcanic Island. The question is, what is the prize? Is the prize show and tell, or is the prize the Brotherhood's End? So we're going to try and cast a show and tell. Some Metallic Rebuke, or a hard cast Force of Will. Alright, we're going to fight over this. Pitching our Atraxa into Force of Will, and then we get to cast this to destroy all their artifacts. Red, 2, and red. Okay. So we can kill our opponent if we draw a sneak attack. If we draw show and tell, we get to do stuff. A Karn. That's pretty good. A Lotus Petal. Not the one we wanted. Maybe we should have kept that. What am I doing? I should have kept that for the purposes of Brainstorm. That's 3 mistakes I've made in this round. They're just going to plus this and kill the Lotus Petal. Oh no, they're just going to go... If they've got another... what's it called? Soul Land, they can play a Omniscience Lattice this turn. And Lattice lock us. Yeah, I made so many mistakes this game. I deserve to lose this round. I think the other rounds we lost, not so much. But this one definitely feels like I deserve to lose this one. We do have another Brotherhood's End in our deck, and we can reshuffle these in with Emrakul later on. A Brainstorm. I would like to cast a Brainstorm. Exactly the thing that I should have kept my Lotus Petal in hand for. What are we doing here? So this Ensnaring Bridge is going to bash us over the course of a few turns here. So I think we need to put back the Force of Will and the Polluted Delta here. And then we cast this Ponder. See, if we'd have kept this in hand, we'd have had a much better chance here. So this is in any order and shuffle. So now we probably want to keep this in hand. Oh god. Sorry viewers. So yeah, so this plus is on this. We take 3. Oh wait, no, they haven't got enough cards in hand to attack with the Ensnaring Bridge. So not on quite as quick a clock. So this is Liquid Metal Coating that's going to start stripping away our mana base. I'm surprised they didn't just wait for the Lattice. They only need 1 more mana for that. So they're going to shut off one of our sources this turn, I would imagine. Probably going to lose... Okay, they'll lose an Ancient Tomb. That's fine. We drew another Ancient Tomb. I think we probably want this island in play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's Omniscience mana, right? Not that we can attack or draw cards with our Griselbrand. Sure. Karn plus is 1, eats it. Flooded Strand. This is one that they can't Liquid Metal Coating away, because we can crack it in response. We're probably just losing the Ancient Tomb. We do have another Ancient Tomb in hand if we need it. I'd honestly be scary if our opponent just started animating their Ensnaring Bridge and attacking us. That's the worst thing our opponent could do from my perspective here. Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, they could have Lattice locked us this turn instead. I don't know what our opponent's doing. They had the win on board there. Right, it doesn't even cost you your Karn. So they have an Emery. Thought Monitor. Karn is also a card that I've not really seen much in these painted decks. There's not really... it's not really a card that you expect to see in them. Obviously, you know, it has various synergies, artifacts and stuff, so it's not completely wild. Okay, I think we are playing out another island. So our opponent can attack us for 3, 4, 5, 6 this turn, or they can make the Lattice lock. They have 2 options to win the game this turn. They had an option last turn to win the game, and they decided not to take it, so that was interesting. So sneak attack is going to be a difficult line for us now. It was already going to be difficult because with Ensnaring Bridge, we're kind of looking to blow everything up. Master Thopterist. I don't know why our opponent keeps giving us all these turns when they have us dead. Are they toying with us, perhaps? Sure. Like, we could have been dead on this turn if they'd have been plus their Ensnaring Bridge. So we don't have any cantrips left. We can't cast Brotherhood's End yet either because we don't have 2 red sources. Red Elemental Blaster we can't cast. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not going to assume our opponent's going to miss lethal for the 3rd turn in a row. Alright, so we finished with a 2-3, and the last round of that was because I personally misplayed. I countered a Painted Servant in game 1 that I had no business counterspelling. It was a completely pointless thing to counterspell. So, yeah, that one's on me. We should have just smashed that round up. This matchup, this deck against Painters should be pretty good. Obviously, Blue Painter can just kind of board into the aggro plan and get rid of all its Painters, which is probably a lot harder for us than other ones. And obviously the Ensnaring Bridge Wishboard is a very powerful tool against what we're trying to accomplish, and we can't actually beat it outside of Brotherhood's End. We don't have a single Brazen Borrower or something like that you sometimes see in these decks, which maybe is something that the deck requires. Let's have a little chat about it. So obviously this deck is good because, you know, it won the tournament like last night or a few nights ago whenever you're watching this. So it's clearly very powerful. I think part of that power is also down to the fact that Sneak and Show is a deck that a lot of people have written off, thinking it wasn't very good at the moment. It didn't have particularly good matchups with the initiative, so people generally didn't want to play it. So I think there's a surprise factor that certainly helps with this deck. But what is important to say, though, is the thing that this deck is trying to achieve is intrinsically very powerful. So even if you're not well set up in the meta, if you're just putting an Emrakul into play on turn 3 or 2 or whatever, or even turn 1, or, you know, an Atraxa or Griselbrand, that's good. That's an objectively good and powerful thing to do in Magic the Gathering. Now, as we saw, there are a few ways that can certainly come back to bite you. So, like, we played a game against the Mirror, which is always going to be weird, and I don't mind losing that. Like I said, I'm a complete novice rookie with this deck, so I wasn't expecting to be able to outplay someone in the Mirror anyway. But I think losing to the Storm round that we lost to is also not necessarily unexpected. We do have interaction, but that interaction isn't the most. So we've got these Force of Wills. We've got these Dazes, which is not that difficult for a lot of Storm decks to play around, and they're so used to playing around it because it's everywhere, and Daze is an absolute staple of the format. And we only have one Flusterstorm, so we didn't really have that many tools to beat Storm. Previous builds of Show and Tell that I've seen have had more Flusterstorms, Force of Negations, things like that. We just had less interaction, really. So this deck was more dedicated to forcing through its thing, hence the Misdirection, which is a counterspell that you can use on your turn. So you redirect a counterspell from your Show and Tell onto the Misdirection itself to effectively counter it. So this is obviously trying to go turbo. We have 5 pieces of fast mana as well as our fast lands. So, we had a game plan. Maybe I should have been mulliganing more aggressively to find the game plan. I think that just comes through experience of playing in the deck. Like, a lot of my hands were fine, but maybe fine isn't good enough, and I need to be having the really good thing because the thing we do is incredibly powerful. But we played against some blue decks, so it's a bit tricky to mulligan against. Also, the Storm deck had discard, so it's a bit tricky to mulligan too hard against a deck that can just punch a hole in your thing so quickly. But the deck felt pretty strong. It felt like it was doing good things. I understand why all these cards are here. Misdirection just being another piece of defense makes sense. We've got a lot of ways of filtering our draws, but I honestly think having some sort of Brazen Borrow in the main deck might be where you want to be. Part of me also wonders if there's another thing that we could put in with Sneak Attack or Show and Tell that would be quite useful to just, dumpster something that's going to be beating us. What is it called? There's a big black-white creature that exiles a permanent when it enters the battlefield that Dredge plays. I think it also exiles something when it leaves maybe as well. It does a lot. So I'm thinking maybe that's something you could have in these sort of decks. So you can put in your big guy, blow up the Ensnaring Bridge and attack. And if they ever deal with it, you get to take something on the way out as well. Maybe that is an option if you still want it. Because obviously Brazen Borrower isn't really fulfilling your game plan of being a Show and Tell deck. It's just a thing that you have because you kind of need some interaction. Whereas having another big creature that you can just chuck into play, I think that's probably slightly better. You could even cut the Omniscience for that. Now, obviously, the Omniscience is really good for the Show and Tell, Hardcast Emrakul, just win the game line. But we only have one Omniscience. Having just another big creature means you have slightly more redundancy for putting things into Sneak Attack with, because you will have another thing to put in with Sneak Attack that's going to do a bit of damage, but also take out 2 key permanents, provided I'm remembering what that card does right. I'm pretty sure I am remembering what that card does right there. So that could be an option, but the deck felt fine. I think losing to the Mirror is a wash. Losing to a Storm deck is kind of expected given the setup we have here. They weren't like completely smashing us around either. It was quite close because it was the slightly slower Storm deck of Ad Nauseam Tendrils. I think the sideboard makes some sense, but 4 defense grid is a lot. But as we mentioned earlier, this deck is trying to turbo out the thing it's doing, so it's not exactly a huge surprise it's just got those in. I think more Brotherhood's End would be useful considering how prevalent Painter is in the meta right now. And as I said earlier, I think it's the 4th best deck in the meta right now. So maybe another Brotherhood's End. But again, we could have played a league and not played against that sort of stuff. And I'd be like, oh, why did I have this Brotherhood's End instead of this other defense grid? Because I got jammed up by all these 4-color control decks or whatever. So there's definitely going to be some variance in terms of matchups to how this deck feels. But overall, I think we showcase what the deck can do quite nicely. And we also showcased some of the deck's weaknesses. And we showcased me being a bit of a clown and making a few errors here and there, which is going to happen when I play these decks I'm not used to. Especially when I'm commentating and my brain isn't always super laser focused as maybe as it should be, like when I'm playing paper and things. But I hope you enjoyed the league. That's all I can say. And we got to showcase a very potent deck that has just taken down the Legacy Showcase. So I think we're done here. So why not like, comment, and subscribe? Let me know what you would like to see me play, or things you'd like to see me build around, or anything like that, and I can try that out. And subscribe, because if I can get to 1,000 subscribers, I can get monetized. If I get monetized, I can play more silly decks. And also, I put a lot of time and effort into making these recordings. So it'd be nice to get a little bit of money back from that, to be honest. Yeah, I think that's about it. So thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.